r/askreddit. What's older than we think?
Flushing toilets date all the way back to the Indus River Valley Civilization, back in 2000 B.
Ancient Minoans, 3100 BA.
Romans had pipe-heated floors, something I still thought was awesome when my aunt got it like a decade ago.
The ancient Romans, well, the wealthy ones, had central heating in their homes. You can actually still see the pipes in some of the buildings at Herculaneum.
Sharks. Sharks as a family are older than a tree.
Escalators have been around since 1859, though they were called rotating stairs.
Yet the U.S. state of Wyoming still only has 2 of them.
Granted, it's not like Wyoming has enough people to really need any more.
The name Tiffany. It dates back to the 12th century and has actually led to a thing in writing called a Tiffany problem. A Tiffany problem because you can have a well-researched historical novel that people just don't buy into because you named your 12th century peasant Tiffany. It just sounds laughably anachronistic.
Tiffany. It's Greek, too. Theophaneia is the root.
The electric car. What is likely the first human-carrying electric vehicle with its own power source was tested along a Paris street in April 1881 by French inventor Gustave Trouvé. The first crude electric car was built in the 1830s, but it was essentially a semi-functioning model. The electric car was a direct competitor to gasoline-powered vehicles until the 1920s when roads got better. People started driving further than the range of an electric car, and the world started finding major oil reserves.
Weren't the first electric cars using lead-acid batteries? If so, when the batteries eventually discharged, did people go somewhere to replace their battery with a new one?
Lead, acid, like car batteries, are rechargeable.
Ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians were as old to the ancient Romans as the ancient Romans are to us.
Cleopatra is chronologically closer to us than she is to when the pyramids were built.
Woolly mammoths were still alive during the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. They died out about a millennium after its completion.
The fact that the lighter is older than the match shook my head as a kid. It also gave me the curiosity to question things that seems obvious.
When you think about it, it makes sense. The lighter is a simple mechanical concept, some flammable gas at a spark. The match, on the other hand, is a complex chemical reaction.
Matches are just way more complex than I thought as a kid. They aren't just a stick of wood.
I don't know if this counts, but dinosaurs lived on the Earth a lot longer than most people think. When you think of dinosaurs, you think of their extinction, but they roamed the Earth for 165 million years. Compare that to our 6 million and it's almost mind-boggling, at least in my opinion. Edit, the modern form of humans is 200,000 years old, but if we include our humanoid ancestors, we've been here 6 million years. Edit 2. I get it. Dinosaurs are still around. What I meant to say was the dinosaur era.
Also, dinosaurs like the Stegosaurus were as far apart in time from the T-Rex as the T-Rex is from our time. It's even better than that. We're about 16 million years closer to the last Tyrannosaurus than the first Tyrannosaurus was to the last Stegosaurus.
Beer is thought to be older than bread. It's much easier to fill a jar with wheat and water, let it ferment and brew beer than it is to grind grain, mix it, and bake it.
I was really surprised to discover when Oxford University was founded. They don't know the year for sure, but they know there was definitely teaching going on there in 1096.
Another commenter above said that Oxford isn't even the oldest university, but it's the most well-known.
Al-Qarawiyyin University in Morocco is the oldest university, founded by Fatima al-Fiyuri in 859. Nintendo. This company was actually created in 1889. Didn't they make cards then?
Yeah, they made Hanafuda cards and fought the Yakuza.
Oreos.
I was shocked to learn that Oreos predate chocolate chip cookies, sliced bread, and my 100-year-old great-grandmother.
And before Oreos, there was Hydrox.
And before Hydrox, there was the Dark Times.
Brain surgery. In 1997, archaeologists discovered an ancient tomb in the French village of Insishtheim from 5000 BC, which contained the decomposing body of a 50-year-old man with holes in his skull. After a thorough examination, it was determined that the holes, located near the frontal lobe, were caused by a type of surgery, not by forced trauma, and the operation appears to have been successful because the wounds healed before the patient's death. To this day, however, researchers cannot say for sure what exactly the surgery was trying to fix.
National Geographic was founded in 1888.
Same year as Foster's and Jack the Ripper.
Contact lenses. Leonardo da Vinci had the idea of contact lenses in 1508, and the first successful contact lenses were made in 1888.
Paul Rudd.
Beer. It's one of the oldest prepared drinks in the world. It not only predates every civilization, but actually contributed to their creation.
It's possible that the whole reason civilization started was to brew beer, as it wasn't as easy as hunter-gatherer.
So you stop to get some beer going. Once it's done, you don't feel much like moving along anymore. And isn't it nice here?
Stonehenge. It predates the oldest pyramid in Egypt by nearly 300 years.
And Newgrange in Ireland predates even Stonehenge. Constructed 5,000 years ago, 3,200 pec.
And Göbekli Tepe predates ancient Rome by nearly 10,000 years. So little is known about it, and the people who built it, that it rarely gets mentioned.
Oxford University. It's older than the Aztec Empire.
I think this one is actually a reverse of the question. The Aztec Empire is much more recent than most people think.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the surprise in this fact comes from the confusion between Aztecs and Mayans. If you didn't know the time period, you could understand the confusion.
Trees. There are a lot of trees that are way older than you would expect.
Sharks are older than trees.
There's a shark swimming in the ocean right now that was alive as early as 1505.
Social media. Wealthy ancient Romans had a system where they used slaves as scribes and messengers in order to share gossip and art/poetry and news updates with friends in their social circle.
The sentiment that modern society is degenerate and that the youth are to blame is, yerk, one of the oldest things we've written down. That I can remember off the top of my head, Cato the Elder complained that the younger generations were becoming too Greek, and Socrates used to complain that the younger generations were ruining their brains by writing instead of memorizing information. There are far more older examples, but those are the oldest I remember. Maybe Socrates was onto something. Eat it. A few people have pointed out the Socrates thing is a misquote, so maybe Pseudo-Socrates was onto something instead.
The year 1990. We are as close to it as we are the year 2050.
The food at the back of your cupboard.
Netflix. I feel like it is only a few years old, but it was invented in 1997.
Cruise control, power windows, and automatic headlights. I saw all three on a 1955 Cadillac. Oh, and the radio on it had a seek function.
The first carbonated drink to be sold to the public was invented by Swiss watchmaker and amateur scientist J.J. Schwepp in 1783, who sold his delicious Aka-Starkling water to thirsty customers in Geneva. In just 7 years, he was doing business so fast that he moved the factory to London and introduced a new flavor, sparkling lemon, to stand out from competitors who were trying to imitate his drink.
Google, Reddit, YouTube, it's hard to imagine that they already have been around for 15 years. With Google actually being around 20 years old, an entire generation has now grown up that cannot remember that it wasn't always there.
Sharks. As a species, they're older than the rings of Saturn.
Jennifer Lopez.
Betty White.
A Native American empire nearly a third of the size of the present-day United States existed in the Great Lakes region at the time the Old Testament of the Bible was thought to be written.
Water. That water you're drinking is as old as the earth.
Law. Roman law was so advanced that there are still large chunks of statutes in civil law countries taken pretty much directly from Roman codices written 1500, 2,000 years ago. Important maritime laws are adaptations of medieval provisions. Lots of business law statutes borrow heavily from Napoleonic laws. In common law countries, you find stuff like the Statute of Marlborough from the 1200s still in effect, along with still relevant case law from the 1700s.
The world in general. The theory that if all of the Earth's history were laid out on a calendar, our current century would only make up the last 10 seconds or so of December 31st. Always blows my mind to consider it that way.
Commercial aircraft. Most are tin. 15 years old, yet a lot of people think they get replaced like cars. They are still very safe, though, despite their age.
The idea that everything's getting worse and that the world's coming to an end soon. Sure, there's new vocabulary and new science involved, but people have been sounding the pessimistic alarm throughout history. Edit. No, not trying to deny climate change. This has also been a fact of life for a while.
Touchscreen in cars. That has been around since 1986.